matter of fact, it was.
Sam Hain. It means the Lord of the Dead. The end of summer.
10 years ago, he tried to kill Laurie Strode. Now he wants her daughter. Michael, go home! Go home!
This thing that lived inside of him came from a source too deadly for you to imagine.
He's dead. Michael Myers is dead.
I knew you'd come for me sooner or later. What took you so long?
These are the eyes of a psychopath.
Michael Myers is fucking dead! D-E-A-D!
Do you know that I pray every night that he would escape so I can kill him? Happy Halloween, Michael.
What's going on, everyone? I'm excited for Halloween Kills coming out very soon, so I decided to go back and revisit the franchise and talk about it once again on my channel. I'm going to do very in-depth spoiler discussions for each of them. And if you don't like my opening intro because you think it's too long, guess what? You can just fast forward right through it and get to here. So stop complaining. Alright, so let's do this. Let's talk about John Carpenter's 1978 classic Halloween, starring Jamie Lee Curtis, PJ Soles, Nancy Loomis, and Donald Pleasance. This was, of course, directed by John Carpenter, written by him and Debra Hill, and the story goes as follows. 15 years after murdering his sister on Halloween night, Michael Myers escapes from a mental hospital and returns to the same town of Haddonfield, Illinois, to kill again. Like I said, this is a spoiler discussion. All of these movies will be spoiler-filled. So, let's talk about the opening, shall we? The open pumpkin intro that was carved by Tommy Lee Wallace, the editor of this film. I think it's such a great, just simple way to start the film, and it just puts you in the Halloween mood. And I really like this opening. I like that they do the Halloween pumpkin opening for a lot of the sequels as well. Another thing we notice from the opening here is the score, the theme song from John Carpenter. It's very iconic. I absolutely love it. If I had to do like a ranking of my favorite scores of all time, I'm sure this would probably be my #1. It's that great. So then after the opening, we get this long one take it's made to look like a one take. They're using a Steadicam. This is one of the first films to use this camera. Dean Cundy, the cinematographer, is a great cinematographer. This movie has some really great cinematography and lighting. It's very well shot, and that's another one of the highlights of this film. Now, what I want to point out is, so this movie starts outside the house, and you're made to think that maybe this is like a home invasion. If you watch this movie with like the lens of like someone watching it for the first time, which is hard to do because you've seen it 1,000 times, but watching it this time, I put myself in the shoes of someone who's watching it for the first time, and it does look like it's maybe a home invasion until she's like, Michael! So it's like, Michael's outside? Why is he by himself? He's 6 years old. Is he trick-or-treating? Why would he be by himself? That's just something I was wondering this time. Another thing I always wonder when watching this is, did they really have sex? Because if so, man, that was quick. That is some of the quickest sex, and you even get another quick sex scene later on with Bob and Linda. It's ridiculous. I mean, she's topless up there, so she got naked. He was going down the stairs, putting his shirt back on, so it's like, I guess they had to be quick because the parents come home not even 2 minutes later. So I guess it was a good thing he was so damn fast. Freaking Flash in the sack. So, and then we get the POV shot, you know, looking through the mask, that shot. It's a great POV. The hand grabbing the knife, that was Debra Hill's hand. And then another thing I like to point out here is that it seems like his sister, Judith, who's like, what, 17? Is just in her bedroom topless with the door like wide open. I don't think he had to open it at first, but like, you know, your little brother's around. Why are you topless? Your parents are going to be home any second now. And it's funny that she seems to be more concerned about covering up her boobs as she's being stabbed than just protecting her life. She's just like, no, you can stab me, but please do not look at my tits. You're my brother.
Michael!
Another thing I thought about while watching it this time is why he felt the need to put on the mask. Is it as if it's saying that he feels like he needs to hide behind a mask to kill? I mean, that would make sense seeing how he always needs to get the masks before he kills later on in the franchise, but he kills the mechanic before he has a mask. But I was just wondering why he felt like he had to cover his face, like his sister wasn't going to recognize him. Like, she immediately was like, Michael! So the mask didn't hide his identity in that moment, so why he felt the need to put the mask on, I have no idea. But it was just another question I had. Another thing I always wonder while watching this scene, there's a lot of things I want to point out here about this opening 5 minutes. So, we all know that he's looking at his hand, and I guess, you know, you can just say, oh, it's just an artistic thing, like, it's just like, you know, John Carpenter trying to be, you know, artsy, like, oh, let's look at the hand, and I don't know, like, but to me, it's because it's trying to be a one take. So, like, how are you going to pull off a practical effect and have blood on her breasts afterwards if it's all being done on camera? They have to cut away to something and then cut back to her having blood on her chest, giving you the illusion that she's been stabbed a bunch. So that, to me, is why the camera cuts to it, not really cut, but, you know, pans over to his hands so they can have an effects guy go in there and throw blood on her chest real quick. Another thing that's done just to be, you know, kind of artsy, it's just for shot's sake, the whole crane shot, like them standing perfectly still, like they're stuck in time, like they're frozen. They're just, Michael, and then they just stand still and the camera keeps going and going. It's like no one's saying anything. Like, if this was real life, they would say something else. They'd be like, where's your sister? Why is the knife bloody? What the hell happened? We can't go to a party for 5 minutes without you killing your sister. And so that's just another one of those moments where I always question, like, why are they just standing so still? It's just for the shot, you know. So then we get introduced to Dr. Loomis, and right away I have to question, is he really a good doctor? We don't ever get to see him with any other patients in this franchise, and that would be interesting to see if they made like a TV series with just Dr. Loomis and his side adventures with these patients and stuff like that. Like, he seems like he's a bad doctor, because just because somebody's not talking for 6 years or so doesn't mean that they're evil. Like, his diagnosis is crazy. Like, oh, he's not speaking, that means he's evil. That's the only explanation. It's like, really, doctor? You gave up that easily? Like, 7 years, that's all it took of this guy just standing perfectly still for you to be like, he's evil. If you thought that Lori was dumb for some of her decisions in the final chase, I think the biggest dumb decision in this whole movie was the nurse rolling down the window when she heard someone on top of the roof. Like, that is the sound of somebody crawling on your roof. She knows that there's a bunch of escaped lunatics just walking around. So it's like, why are you, like, rolling down the window? Like, what's up there? Sticking her head out just to get attacked. And thanks to the Blu-ray, we can now see that Michael Myers clearly is holding a wrench to break that window. So I guess he's not that strong. And I guess you could say that Michael Myers literally threw a wrench into Loomis's plan to get him transported to Ridgemont. So then we're introduced to our main character here, our final girl, Laurie Strode. She's walking around with Tommy Doyle, and we see that some former Californians in Haddonfield got homesick, so they decided to plant some palm trees in the background.
I wish I had you all alone, just the two of us.
I love the moment when she's singing Just the Two of Us. It's like foreshadowing the end of the movie when everyone else is just gone. It's just the two of them. So that's a great foreshadowing moment, and another cool stalking shot of Myers. And there's a lot of great stalking shots in this movie. That's something that kind of went away in the sequels, is the whole aspect of Michael Myers being more of a stalker than a killer. In this one, we got great iconic shots of him stalking behind a bush, in her backyard, outside the school, following them down the street in his car, and even following Tommy Doyle home from school. I do wonder how he found Tommy and Laurie the way he did, like, just knows what window to look into and just pulls up at the right moment to find Tommy getting picked on by those asshole bullies. So we cut back to Smith's Grove, and we got this guy who I think is supposed to be Dr. Wynn, who ends up being the bad guy in Halloween 6. And this hospital that you see in this movie is the same one that was used later on in The Blob. I thought that was a cool little trivia fact. And we get the explanation real quick about how he's able to drive. I mean, they don't really say how he's able to drive, but he just goes, maybe somebody here gave him lessons.
I'm wasting my time. Sam Haddonfield is 150 miles away from here. Now, for God's sakes, he can't drive a car.
He was doing very well last night. Maybe someone around here gave him lessons.
Maybe it was Dr. Wynn. So then we get our first victim after the opening, and it's the mechanic. And one thing I always wonder is how exactly did he get killed? I'm thinking maybe he used that wrench from earlier, and maybe he killed him not only for his outfit, but just to put an end to his misery of having to live with that horrible 70s porn mustache. Now, one of the few conveniences in this movie is that Dr. Loomis pulls up to this phone booth where you can see a crew member in the reflection that's just out there in the middle of nowhere next to a train track. Like, and then there's the body right there. I mean, come on, that just seems a little coincidental, don't you think? And I wonder why Michael Myers didn't steal that truck. Usually when you steal a car, at some point you want to steal a different car because everyone's looking for that car now. Maybe the tow truck was a stick shift and he didn't know how to drive that. So then we're introduced to Linda and Annie, Linda being my favorite character. She says in this movie totally 11 times. I counted 10, but the internet said 11.
It's totally insane. I'll be totally wiped out.
I don't think you have enough to do tomorrow.
Totally.
Totally. Totally charted.
Totally.
Totally.
Put me down! This is totally silly!
Yeah, it's totally dark. Well, she's totally not here. Totally.
Another thing that Linda says in this movie that got me thinking was when she says, I think he's cute. But was she referring to Devon Graham? Hey, isn't that Devon Graham? Or was she saying that Michael Myers was cute? He's clearly wearing a mask when he drives right by them. So how can she say that Michael Myers looks cute with a mask on? I'm thinking maybe she was referring to Devon Graham because that's who she thought that was. There's a few little, like, I guess you could call them goofs or mistakes in the film. They don't take away from the experience at all, but I just want to point them out real quick. These are things that I notice every time I watch this movie, especially after watching the commentary. When they're walking down the street, there's some point where you can see like a shoulder of a crew member as they're walking down the street. You can see John Carpenter's cigarette smoke next to the bush when Annie's going to investigate. You can see the camera shadow on the wall during the opening shot. And even later on, you can see a boom mic for a brief second beneath Tommy. But again, these are just little mistakes that this low-budget film made, and it doesn't take away from the experience.
Excuse me, Laurie.
Oh, Mr. Brackett, I'm sorry, Mr. Brackett.
Oh, I didn't mean to startle you.
That's all right.
You know, it's Halloween. I guess everyone's entitled to one good scare, huh?
That's right, we're entitled to one good scare. Not one jump scare. If this movie was made today, they would have threw a stinger noise in there with it. So when Laurie is walking home from school, there's kids already trick-or-treating. It's like 3 or 4 at best. I've always known trick-or-treating to be like a 2-hour thing from 6 to 8. That's the way it's always been forever. Now, are we actually led to believe that Michael Myers disappeared in the blink of an eye in Laurie's backyard? That's something I've always wondered, because to me in this one he's supposed to be not supernatural, and that clearly is a sign of teleportation right there. I mean, I can buy him getting in the car real quick and driving off, but him leaving like that so quickly, she never even looks away. The way it's edited, it's clearly teleportation or it's all in her mind. And that's what I'm going with, because she's already seen him stalking her at the school, down the road in his car. She's seen him a few times already, so now she's already paranoid about it. So to me, she's hallucinating Myers in that scene. Now, why did Loomis go to the cemetery? Was it because he thought that Myers would just be there, waiting? I mean, maybe. It just seems kind of random. Like, wouldn't you just go straight to the house first? He goes to the cemetery first. And I wish that we could hear the end of that fucking story about Charlie Bowles. Quit interrupting him every time I watch Loomis.
I remember over in Russellville, old Charlie Bowles, about 15 years ago. One night he finished dinner and he excused himself from the table and he went out to the garage. He got himself a hacksaw. And then he went back into the house and he kissed his wife and his 2 children goodbye. And then he proceeded...
Where are we? Where's Judith's grave? I want to see it. Every time he interrupts him, it's so annoying. They need to make a movie about Charlie Bowles, the untold story, thanks to Loomis. All right, here's the biggest, like, what the fuck moment in the movie to me. So, Myers breaks into this hardware store that's selling Halloween masks. He breaks into this place in the morning, because we see him clearly wearing that mask early morning before she goes to school. And now the police department of Haddonfield is responding at like 6:30 p.m. because she's getting picked up by Annie at 6:30, they say, right? But it doesn't even matter what time exactly it is. Who cares? It's evening. This place got broken into in the morning. That fucking alarm's been ringing for like 12 hours straight, and now they're just getting on the case. What the hell? And he steals 2 knives, right? They say 2 knives and a rope. We see the rope being used later on, and we see him use 1 knife. Did he like use a knife for Annie and a separate knife for Bob? Maybe. But yeah, and another thing I want to question here is, because he killed his sister wearing a clown mask, and that's what he wore that night in 1963, wouldn't you think that he would want to steal a clown mask? Why steal the Shatner mask? Just saying, you know, and they were going to use a clown mask originally, and that would make sense. They were going to use like an Emmett Kelly clown mask, right? So I was just thinking that he would be more drawn to clown mask instead, but I love that they went with the Shatner mask, because it's just perfect. It's just like Loomis says, as he's describing Michael. It's just this pale, emotionless face, the blackest eyes, the devil's eyes. It's a terrific mask, and I'm so glad that they used it, and I'm so mad that they failed to use it again in the sequels after part 2.
I met this 6-year-old child with this blank, pale, emotionless face and the blackest eyes, the devil's eyes. I spent 8 years trying to reach him, and then another 7 trying to keep him locked up, because I realized that what was living behind that boy's eyes was purely and simply evil.
One thing I do find kind of unique about this movie is that it's a masked killer, but it's not a whodunit. Usually slasher movies in the 80s and up to even to this day, if it's a masked killer, it's a whodunit. But in this one, we know who the killer is from the opening, and it's still a masked killer. So I just thought that was interesting. And this is probably one of the first slasher movies to come out with a masked killer. There wasn't a whole lot of that going on before this. So maybe this was the start. I mean, before this, what did you have? Like Alice, Sweet Alice, I guess? But this was one of the first ones, really. Another thing I have to question here real quick is why Annie felt the need to stop to talk to her dad when she knows that they just lit a joint, and any cop on Earth would be able to smell that instantly. There's no way he didn't know what was going on in that car. I call bullshit there. Why stop at all? Just keep going. Your dad's not going to be like, why didn't she stop to talk to me? Clearly she's smoking dope. It's just ridiculous. And why are they smoking pot before a babysitting gig? Like, oh, let's go babysit some kids, but first let's get high. And this right here proves that the whole, like, Final Girls back in the day, they didn't have sex, they didn't do drugs, is bullshit, because Lori is talking about boys. Ben Tramer, she has a crush. She wants to have sex with him, I bet, right? And she is smoking dope with Annie, so she's not so perfect. So Annie and Lori are ride sharing because they both just so happen to be babysitting right next door to each other. That's another little coincidence right there. And if this was me, I would notice that somebody's been following me for miles. Just saying. Like, how did Annie not notice that pair of headlights behind her for miles and then parking on the street right behind her as she dropped off Lori? I would have noticed that instantly. What's up with all the parents in Haddonfield all going to parties instead of just taking their kids out trick-or-treating first and then go to a party? I mean, poor Tommy and Lindsay don't get to go trick-or-treating because of their asshole parents.
What is that?
It's a dog. It's still warm.
He got hungry.
We find out that Myers eats dogs when they go to the Myers house, and he eats dogs and kills dogs throughout this whole freaking franchise. That's one thing that makes him stand out from the other killers like Jason Voorhees. This killer likes to keep murdering and eating dogs, but my question is, we know he eats dogs, but does he eat pussy? I think it's kind of cool retrospectively that John Carpenter put The Thing on the TV that Lindsay was watching, and then like 4 years later he would remake that movie, which is another masterpiece. And really, all it takes is a little bit of butter on your clothes to make you just disrobe right away. Alright, and I guess I know how to get women to get naked now. The idea of a laundry room being detached from the house, to me, is just kind of weird. I've never seen that in any other movie, really, a separate location for the laundry room. And then, you know, John Carpenter is on the phone as Paul talking to Annie. And I will say that one of my dislikes for this movie, it's a small thing that doesn't hurt the film that much, is Annie's, or, you know, the actress, her performance as Annie Brackett. I think she's the weakest of the main characters, performance-wise. I find it kind of hypocritical that Annie's on the phone with Paul saying, like, is that all you think about is sex? And then 3 seconds later, she's basically like, let's fuck. Let's just stop talking about these things and get down to doing them already. Another question I have is, was Annie going to give her babysitting money to Lori? Because you don't get to just collect all the money when you spent half the night fucking your boyfriend after pawning the kids off onto Lori. Like, here, you take care of them, I'm going to go have sex, and then I'm going to collect the money at the end of the night like I was babysitting the whole time. So then we get the death scene of Annie, and one thing I never noticed until a few years back, I think it was just because of Blu-ray, was that Myers uses a knife. I never noticed the knife before. I always thought that he just strangled her, but now it's clear more than ever that he actually takes a knife and swipes at her neck, and she dies instantly from that, which is a little unrealistic. And she, like, breaks the fourth wall at one moment, too. She looks over at the camera, like, what the hell was up with that? And then he starts to carry her body to the house, but I thought it was interesting that he carried her in through the front door instead of the back door that we see later on. Why not use that door? I guess it had to happen this way so that Tommy could witness this happen, which would be terrifying as a kid, as he's playing the worst game of hide-and-seek ever. Tommy does not know how to hide for shit. So meanwhile, Loomis is taking notes from Myers. He's stalking the Myers place, hiding behind the bushes, and he scares these little kids. And this is like one of 2 times in this whole franchise where you actually get to see Loomis smile. It bugs me every time when I hear Brackett blame Loomis, and Loomis doesn't really, like, stand up for himself that much. Like, he should have been like, no, listen, like, this is what happened. They escaped before I got there, so shut your fucking mouth. And I told you that there was a murder on the loose. Shouldn't you be more concerned about your daughter and trying to find out where she is right now? It's your fault she's dead.
First we go inside, right? Then we'll just talk a little. And then Annie will distract Lindsay. That's when we go upstairs to the first bedroom on the left. You got it?
Okay, first I rip your clothes off.
Don't rip my blouse. It's expensive, idiot.
Then you rip my clothes off. Then we rip Lindsay's clothes off. Yeah, I think I got it.
Totally.
I must say the most disturbing part of this movie is when Bob says that he wants to rip little Lindsay's clothes off, and then Linda is, like, seemingly okay with that. Like, totally. I mean, really? I was expecting when they walked into the living room that Chris Hansen would just be sitting on the couch like, what are you doing here? Huh? Come here. Looking for Lindsay? No. Sit down. All right? Let's talk about your sick obsession. So they go into the house, and once again, we get some very quick sex. It only lasts like 15 seconds or so. These men in Haddonfield are very quick. And one thing I noticed this time is that the Wallace house on the outside is not the same on the inside. There's this whole extra section to the right when you walk in, but on the exterior shots, there's clearly nothing over there on the right side. And seriously, who goes and fucks in some stranger's house not knowing when exactly they're gonna be back? I mean, these people are risk takers. Then we get the best kill in the movie. Even though it's impossible, I still love it. Linda, you asshole, gets picked up. We get a display of super strength from Myers.
Here comes.
What? The blood is all wrong. Why do they do that? It's too red.
That knife would not be able to go all the way through him and then stick into the wall enough to, like, prop his body up above the ground like that. That would just not happen. And there's no blood in this scene, okay, Scream? Alright, there's no blood. A little thing that makes this kill even better is the fact that Myers does his iconic head tilt as if he's, like, observing his work of art. And then we get this moment where, again, I start asking questions. So he puts on the sheet to look like a ghost. He puts on Bob's glasses to make her think, oh, it's Bob because of the glasses. Instead of, oh, it's Bob because who else would be here? I mean, seriously. So, like, would Myers really do this to taunt his victims? But he's not really taunting her. Like, she thinks that's Bob. And holy shit. Another thing I never really thought of until recently is, does Linda even know that someone else is killing her? Like, does she die thinking that her own boyfriend who she just had sex with like 10 seconds ago, is now strangling her to death. Like, she's in her last moments probably like, oh my god, my boyfriend's strangling me. Why? What did I do? Was I not good enough? I guess I should have got the beer myself. Maybe he wouldn't have strangled me. I guess making him go do chores for me real quick was enough to piss him off and make him a homicidal maniac. But, like, would Myers really do this, and why? Even if he walked up there in just the Myers get-up, she would have been like, okay, Bob, what are you doing? Where'd you get the mask? Like, she would have just assumed that it was Bob still. I mean, they're around the same height. It's not like the remake where it's like, okay, that's clearly not Bob. They're the same height. So, like, Myers in the mask would have been just as fine, and she would have been like, okay, Bob, what are you doing? Can't I get your ghost, Bob? So I just have to question, why is he doing this? I guess he's just a child at heart. He's just playing games with his victims.
See anything you like?
Yes. Yes, I do. She's the hottest chick in this movie. I'll just say that right now. If I had to pick a hottest chick in this movie, it would be Linda. Totally sexy. When Linda's getting killed, this is like the best look of the mask. Like, this is when you get your first up-close look of the Shatner mask. And it's just a great shot when he picks up the phone. The lighting by Dean Cundy here. What a great shot. And then we get another convenience in the movie where Loomis finally, after hours of just being so fixated on the house, just looking in one direction, he finally is like, maybe I should look over here. Oh, look, there's the car. Really? I mean, come on. Like, he was just so focused on the house. But why is the car there? We saw that Myers parked the car in front of the Wallace and Doyle house earlier. Why would he, after, he parked and he walked away, he was stalking Annie and going around the house. At some point, we're led to believe, in between all that shit, he went back in the car, drove all the way to the Myers house, and then walked his way back to the Wallace place. And how far away are these places from each other? Just a question I have. Like, we know that the Wallace and Doyle place are right next door to each other, and we know that the Myers house is not that far from Laurie's house, but how far is Myers' house from the Wallace house? That's what I want to know. It has to be far, because from the moment he sees the car, it keeps cutting back to him just walking a block and another block. He walks quite a few different blocks to get to the house later on, so it has to be far away. So we find out where the missing tombstone from earlier is. Myers somehow took steroids and was able to pick up this big tombstone that probably weighs a ton. And, I mean, they would weigh a lot. And he picks this thing up, puts it in the back of the station wagon, and then drives it to the house, carries it upstairs, and puts it behind Annie, of all people. And where was Annie's body that whole time? Where was she when they were having sex on the bed? Was she just in the closet? The fact that he puts it behind Annie is interesting, the tombstone. Like, it's as if he's saying that Annie reminds him of his sister, and that's why he wanted to kill her. And I know there's a theory out there that he was after Annie the whole time and not Laurie, but I don't buy into that at all, because after the whole, like, hey, jerk, speed kills, he's still stalking Laurie after that moment, because we get that shot of him in the backyard behind the sheets. But then again, that could just be a hallucination by Laurie, who's just paranoid at that moment. And how deep is the closet in this place? Bob's body would not be able to just be falling down the way it does. And what exactly is triggering his body to fall on cue like that? Is Myers like in the other room holding the rope and then letting go? Is it something like that, like a rope and pulley system? Does she step over a tripwire? Is it just convenience? It's just a convenience, I guess. And I always get a chuckle looking at dead Linda's face, like she's all like cross-eyed. Makes me laugh every time. Then we get one of the best shots in the movie, and that is Myers coming in from the shadows, his mask slowly being more and more visible, and then out of nowhere, he's like the most lousiest serial killer. He has the worst aim now. All of a sudden, he can't kill Laurie. He's right on top of her, and he stabs down and hits her arm instead. I mean, come on, this guy is just clumsy now. So he chases her across the street, and we see that he's slowly walking towards her, but not so Dick Warlock slow. And she gets in the house, and right away he's already in there. Like, she sees the window open. I mean, he got in there very quick. And then once again, he has very bad aim. He goes to stab at her, misses, and hits the couch instead. I guess he's just really angry at the couch. And she hits him with like a knitting needle and drops the weapon. I mean, she's not a good final girl. If we're gonna be honest, Laurie is not that great of a final girl. She keeps dropping the goddamn weapon again and again. She drops the knife, she drops the knitting needle. I mean, come on, Laurie. Learn from your mistakes. But I still love this whole third act. I think it's very suspenseful. It's just little things that I have to point out, alright? But yeah, so we get the whole closet scene. That's another great scene. And then she thinks real quick, makes a weapon out of a hanger, stabs him in the eye with it. And, you know, then stabs him in the chest, and we get that awesome iconic shot of him doing that sit-up. So I guess he's been doing a lot of crunches at Smith's Grove. He's got a lot of core strength now. And then we get the unmasking of Myers, because John Carpenter, for some reason, decided that his face needed to be shown and hire a different person for some reason. And Loomis comes barging in, and he shoots him 6 times. Unless you're watching part 2, then he shot him 7 times, and he falls off the balcony, not a goddamn ramp. And then we get the line that I always misheard all the time growing up.
What's the boogeyman?
As a matter of fact, it was.
I always thought she said, you know, was that the boogeyman? But no, she says it was the boogeyman, and then he's like, I believe it, yes, as a matter of fact, it was. But I always misheard that. And a little behind the scenes trivia here, you can see on her face like a mark from the couch that she slept on set. So now that you have Blu-ray, you can clearly see that she was asleep on the couch at some point when you look at her face. And then we get this great ending. The body's gone, the music starts up again. We see every location that we've seen throughout the movie, all these different locations. Like, is he here? He could be anywhere. He's the boogeyman. And then the last shot, though, like one of the last shots, the one of like the Wallace house, one thing I did not notice until my last time watching it is that you can clearly see for just a second Myers carrying Annie's dead body. They were reusing footage from earlier, and now it's clear as day. Every time I watch it, I can't not see it now. So now we're at the very, very end, the end credits, and here comes the biggest goof of the entire fucking movie, because somebody who's in charge of credits doesn't know math. It says Michael Myers, age 23. He clearly was 6 years old. They stated that in the movie. It was 1963, and then it says 15 years later, it's 1978. You do the math, he's clearly 21, and then you cut to Halloween 2. When they're at the dentist's office, he's like, Michael Myers is 21. But then at the end of that movie, it says again, Michael Myers, age 23. What the fuck? So there you have it. That is the end of my very long, in-depth, over-analytical review of John Carpenter's Halloween. I hope you enjoyed it. Hope you learned something. Hope you had a laugh. Hope you didn't get offended. I still love the damn movie. I can nitpick it and still love it. They're just nitpicks. It's still a classic. I got the shirt on. I'm a fan. It's one of my favorite franchises. So, yeah, don't get mad. Don't get butthurt about it, all right? It's just an opinion. Just want to point some things out. So, let me know what you think about this movie in the comments below. Are you looking forward to Halloween Kills? I know I am. And as always, if you like what you've seen here, you can hit this like button and become a subscriber today just by clicking on my cartoon face in about 5 seconds. And remember, it's just an opinion. You don't need to get butthurt about it.